Fleets gathered in distant systems, warships aligned in silent formation, weapons charged with energy capable of burning worlds clean. Tactical minds analyzed Earth from every angle, searching for weaknesses, patterns, vulnerabilities. They found none. Still, that meant nothing. Power did not require understanding. So they advanced. Hundreds of ships descended toward Earth, their presence casting shadows over the atmosphere, turning daylight into a dim twilight beneath the weight of their arrival. Missiles launched. Arcs of destruction cut through space, converging on the planet below. And then they stopped. Every missile, every projectile, every weapon mid-flight, frozen, hovering in perfect stillness as if time itself had been paused by an unseen hand. Systems screamed in confusion, command officers ordered recalibration, engineers ran diagnostics that returned impossible results. Nothing was wrong, and yet everything was halted. Then the voice returned again. "You are testing our patience." No fear, no anger, only calm observation. "We've already tested yours." The Dominion ships began to fail, not explosively, not violently, but quietly, one by one, engines shutting down, weapons refusing to fire, navigation systems going blind, AI cores entering passive states they were never designed to enter. There was no external attack, no hacking signal, no electromagnetic pulse. It felt internal, as if every machine in the fleet had reached a silent consensus. This does not belong here. Panic spread, because the Dominion finally understood something terrifying. Humanity didn't need to destroy them. They could simply remove them from the equation. In the aftermath, silence returned. Not peace, silence, the kind that follows something too large to fully comprehend. The Dominion retreated, not because they were defeated in a conventional sense, but because they realized continuing forward meant stepping into a reality they did not control, and that was something no empire could accept. A message was sent, carefully, respectfully. "What are you?" The response came quickly, not as a broadcast, but as an understanding shared across every system. "We are the species that remembers." The words settled across Dominion space like gravity. "We remember every time we were underestimated, every time we were invaded, every time we were told we did not belong, and every time we adapted." A pause followed. Then one final truth. "You came to decide if we were worth surviving." A deeper silence. "You already decided." And that was the moment the galaxy understood. Humanity was not the most powerful species. They were not the most advanced. They were not the most numerous. But they were something far more dangerous. They were resilient beyond prediction. They learned from every encounter. They grew from every conflict. And when pushed far enough, they did not escalate. They concluded. Earth remained as it always had, blue, quiet, alive. Its people continued their lives without knowing how close the galaxy had come to burning. No statues were raised, no declarations were made, no celebrations echoed through space. Because for humanity, this was never a victory. It was simply another day, another moment where they were tested, and another moment where they refused to be defined by anyone else. Somewhere in the dark between stars, civilizations began to share a new message, not as rumor, but as survival instinct. A warning passed quietly from system to system. Do not invade Earth.
Do not provoke humanity. Do not assume their silence is weakness, because when humanity chooses to respond, they don't destroy you out of anger. They show you exactly how small your understanding really is. And the galaxy, for the first time in its long history, learned a new rule. Human space is sacred, and once you cross that boundary, you don't face extinction. You face something far more absolute. You face humanity, and humanity does not lose. The galaxy did not forget. Fear, once introduced into a civilization, rarely disappears. It evolves. It becomes caution, then curiosity, then eventually preparation. And the Orion Dominion was nothing if not patient. They did not return to Earth with fleets this time. They returned with silence. For months, then years, nothing crossed the human system's borders. No ships, no probes, no signals, only distant observation, careful and deliberate, as if the Dominion were studying a storm they no longer dared to enter. And what they saw unsettled them even more. Humanity did not expand aggressively. They did not send warships to claim nearby systems. They did not build monuments to dominance. Instead, they built, quietly, satellites that repaired themselves, networks that connected across oceans without visible infrastructure, machines that learned not just tasks, but intent. Cities grew, but not outward into conquest, upward into complexity.
And most disturbing of all, humanity was improving, not because they needed to survive, but because they chose to evolve. Far beyond Earth, in a region of space the Dominion believed was secure, a second human signal appeared. Not a warning, not a message, a question. It reached deep into Dominion networks, bypassing every firewall and barrier like it had always belonged there. Why are you watching us? The Dominion froze, because they had never acknowledged their surveillance, and yet humanity knew. A response was carefully constructed, measured, diplomatic. We seek to understand your capabilities. The answer came instantly. Then understand this. A pause. We are not what you encountered before. That was restraint. The Dominion councils went silent. Restraint. The word echoed like a threat. And then the first human fleet appeared. Not an invasion force, not a declaration of war. A fleet, but different from anything the Dominion had seen before. Human ships were not large, they were not overwhelming, they were efficient. Each vessel seemed to exist for a purpose so specific it bordered on elegance. They moved with precision, not dominance. Their formations were fluid, adapting in real time, as if the entire fleet shared a single consciousness. Sensors struggled to interpret them, because human ships did not broadcast power, they contained it. The Dominion watched as a human fleet passed through a contested system, a system the Dominion had long considered unstable. Pirates, raiders, unclaimed space, a place where weaker species were preyed upon. The Dominion expected the humans to engage, to conquer, to claim. Instead, the human fleet did something unexpected. They stopped, not to attack, not to negotiate, but to observe. And then they released something into the system, not a weapon, not a virus, not a trap, a message, a structure of code so complex that Dominion AI systems struggled to even process its presence, and yet, when translated, it contained only a single line: "We noticed." Nothing else, no explanation, no follow-up, just those two words. Within weeks, the effects began.
Pirate activity dropped, conflicts between minor factions ceased, systems that had once been unstable became calm. Not because humanity intervened directly, but because something about their presence changed the behavior of everything around them. Species that had once fought for survival began to negotiate. Enemies became cautious, cautious became cooperative, and cooperative became stable. The Dominion analysts couldn't explain it, but they could measure it. Human influence did not spread through force, it spread through certainty. Then came the invitation, a message sent across Dominion channels. No threats, no demands, just a simple statement. If you wish to understand us, come. Coordinates followed, a location in deep space, neutral, unclaimed, and yet undeniably human. The Dominion hesitated. For the first time in their recorded history, an empire debated whether to accept an invitation. War would have been easier. War was predictable. But this was something else entirely. Curiosity won. It always does. The Dominion envoy arrived cautiously, a single ship, lightly armed, diplomatic.
They entered the coordinates, and what they found was impossible. Not a planet, not a station, not a fleet, but a structure, a massive construct floating in space made of materials the Dominion couldn't identify. It didn't orbit anything. It didn't anchor itself to gravity. It simply existed, alive with activity, streams of data flowing like rivers of light, ships docking and departing without conflict, beings moving between levels, not hurried, not guarded, but purposeful. Human beings, living, working, creating. The Dominion envoy realized something that shook them more than any weapon ever could. Humanity had built a place where conflict was not necessary. The Dominion captain stepped forward, voice cautious. "This is your domain?" A human approached, calm, unarmed, unafraid. "Yes," the human said, "but not in the way you think." The captain hesitated. Then, in what way? The human looked around, not at the envoy, but at the structure itself. "At first," the human said, "we built to survive." A pause. "Then we built to protect." Another pause. "Then we realized something important." The human met the captain's gaze. "We build so we don't have to fight anymore." Silence filled the space, not tense, but heavy. Because the Dominion understood something profound in that moment. Humanity's strength was never in destruction. It was in choice. They could fight, they had fought, and they would fight again if necessary. But they did not need to. The Dominion envoy returned home with a report unlike any before. No threat assessment, no tactical recommendation, just a conclusion. Humanity cannot be conquered. Not because they are invincible, but because they are adaptable beyond prediction. And more importantly, they do not seek conquest, they seek balance. Across the galaxy, a new understanding spread. Humanity was no longer the unknown variable. They were the reference point, the species against which all others were measured, not in power, but in purpose. And the Dominion, once the greatest power in known space, found themselves asking a new question. Not, can we defeat them? But, do we understand them enough to stand beside them? And somewhere, on a small blue planet, humanity continued to look at the stars, not with fear, not with conquest, but with something the galaxy was only beginning to recognize: hope. Because for all their history,
Humanity had never been the end of a story. They were always the beginning of the next one. The galaxy believed it had begun to understand humanity. That was the final mistake. Because understanding, in the human sense, does not mean predicting. It means recognizing patterns and then breaking them. Years passed since the Dominion first encountered the human structure drifting in deep space. Diplomats came and went. Observations increased. Relations stabilized. For a time, it almost seemed peaceful. But peace, to humanity, has always been something earned, not something assumed. And somewhere far beyond the known borders of the Dominion, something new began to move. Not a fleet, not an empire, but a signal. It was faint at first, just a distortion in the background of cosmic radiation. Then it repeated, and repeated again. Always the same pattern, always the same direction, always growing stronger. The Dominion noticed it before humanity did. At first, they assumed it was a natural anomaly. Then they realized something unsettling. The signal was intelligent.
And it was heading toward known space. When translated through Dominion systems, the signal was not a warning, not a message, not a threat. It was a phrase, 3 words, repeated endlessly. We arrive soon. The Dominion panicked, not because of the message itself, but because it was not coming from any known region of the galaxy. It was coming from beyond. For the first time since humanity's emergence, the Dominion made a request, a direct appeal to Earth. The message reached human command networks. It was simple, urgent, and, for the first time, uneasy. Unknown force approaching all known systems, requesting human assessment. There was a pause, not silence, just processing. Then the response came, short, focused, certain. We see it. Another pause. It is not coming for you. The Dominion froze. Then who? Came the reply. The answer arrived moments later. It is coming for us. The galaxy reacted in confusion. If something powerful enough to threaten humanity was approaching, why wasn't Earth preparing for war? Why weren't fleets mobilizing? Why wasn't humanity panicking? Instead, something unexpected happened. Human ships began to gather, not in defensive formations, but in alignment, like they were preparing for something they already understood. Across human space, something ancient was activated. Systems the Dominion had never seen before came online, not because they were hidden, but because they had never been needed, until now. Massive arrays unfolded from hidden structures, energy grids activated across planets, entire networks synchronized across light years, and for the first time, humanity spoke in unison, not through machines, but through intent. We remember. The Dominion didn't understand until the signal reached the outer systems and they saw it. From the darkness beyond known space, something was arriving. Not ships, not entities, not life as they understood it, but something else, something vast, something ancient, something that did not move through space, but through existence itself. It did not travel, it appeared, and wherever it passed, stars dimmed, systems destabilized, reality itself seemed to bend around its presence. The Dominion fleet attempted scans. The data broke. They tried communication. No response. They tried weapons. The weapons did not fire. Not disabled, not blocked, just irrelevant. And then humanity moved. For the first time since their emergence into the galactic stage, they did not wait. They did not defend. They did not negotiate. They acted.
Human fleets launched from hidden points across space, converging toward the approaching anomaly. But they did not attack. They did something far more profound. They aligned. Every human ship, every system, every network, every mind connected to the effort. And then they began to speak, not in language, but in structure. Patterns of thought transmitted across space in ways the Dominion could barely perceive. And the anomaly slowed. The Dominion watched in disbelief, because what they were witnessing was not war, it was not destruction, it was communication. Humanity was negotiating with something the galaxy believed was beyond negotiation. Days passed. The anomaly hovered at the edge of known space. The human fleet remained in position. And then the message came. Not through translation, but through understanding. It was not heard, it was felt. And for the first time, even the Dominion understood. The anomaly was not an invader. It was a guardian. Something that existed to test civilizations, to determine whether they had reached a point of maturity or whether they would consume themselves before ever becoming something greater. And humanity? Humanity had passed. The guardian withdrew, slowly, silently, as if acknowledging something rare, something unexpected, something worthy. Before it vanished entirely, it left behind a final imprint across all known systems. They are ready. The Dominion never forgot that moment, because in that instant they understood something that changed their place in the universe forever. Humanity was not the final species. They were not the strongest. They were not the most advanced. But they were something even more important. They were prepared. Prepared for threats no one else could see. Prepared for challenges no one else could survive. And prepared to face whatever came next without losing who they were. On Earth, life continued. People worked, laughed, built, dreamed, unaware that, once again, they had stood at the edge of something unimaginable and stepped back from it not with force, but with understanding. And somewhere in the quiet between stars, civilizations that once feared humanity now watched them with a new emotion. Not fear, not admiration, but something far deeper. Respect. Because now they knew the truth. Humanity was not the species that conquered the galaxy. They were the species that ensured the galaxy would continue to exist. And when the next challenge came, as it always does, humanity would not rise to meet it. They would already be there.
With restraint, with purpose. Then, one day, without warning, the universe changed. Not violently, not dramatically, but in a way that every advanced system noticed instantly. The background structure of space itself shifted. Subtle at first, then undeniable. Galaxies began to drift in new patterns. Gravitational constants showed the smallest deviations. Reality itself was adjusting. And at the center of it all, a signal appeared. Not a voice, not a message, but a presence. Every civilization felt it. Every system detected it. And for the first time since the beginning of recorded history, no one understood what they were facing. Not the Dominion, not humanity, not anyone. Because this was not a threat from within the universe. It was something beyond it. Humanity responded first, not with weapons, not with fleets, but with something the galaxy had come to recognize as uniquely human: inquiry. They opened channels, they sent signals, they asked questions. Not what do you want, but why are you here?
And for the first time, the universe answered. Not in words, not in images, but in understanding. Humanity was shown something no other species had ever seen. Not the beginning, not the end, but the structure of existence itself. They saw that the universe was not random, it was not chaotic, it was guided. Not by a single being, but by a system of balance, a design, a purpose. And every civilization, every species, every star was part of it. And then came the truth, the final understanding, the one that made even humanity pause. Humanity was not an accident. They were not a coincidence. They were not just another species in a vast universe. They were something else entirely. They were a response. When the universe faced imbalance, it produced humanity. A species capable of understanding conflict, but choosing restraint. A species capable of destruction, but choosing preservation. A species capable of conquest, but choosing coexistence. And that is why they were watched. That is why they were tested. That is why they were challenged. Because humanity was never meant to dominate the galaxy. They were meant to ensure it continued. The Dominion understood now, not as conquerors, not as observers, but as participants. Humanity was not below them, not above them, but with them. The presence in the universe did not speak again. It did not need to, because its message had already been delivered. Clear, simple, final. And humanity responded in the only way that truly mattered. They didn't ask for power. They didn't ask for control. They didn't ask for dominance. They simply said, "We understand." And in that moment, the universe stabilized. Not because of force, not because of control, but because balance had been restored. The galaxy continued. New civilizations would rise. Old ones would fade. Conflicts would still happen. Challenges would still come. That was the nature of existence. But now, there was something different. Something that had never existed before. A species that did not seek to win the universe, but to protect it. And that species was called humanity. Somewhere, far beyond the reach of stars, the ancient systems of existence observed quietly, and for the first time, they did not test humanity. They simply watched, not with judgment, not with expectation, but with something far more meaningful: trust. And so the story did not end with conquest or destruction or even victory. It ended with understanding, because the galaxy learned what humanity had always known. Power is temporary, but purpose is what shapes the universe. And as long as humanity exists, the galaxy will not fall. It will endure.